Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
Welcome back to the Outlaw Lawyers. Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, managing partners, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, practicing attorneys here in the great state of North Carolina. Offices in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, and Gastonia. We have Joe Hamer on assignment, not feeling well today. So this week, Cassandra Nicholas and Taylor Scruggs-Smith are joining us on the program. Obviously, Josh Whitaker is here. There's a lot going on in the legal world. We're going to get to that. If you've got a legal situation that you're facing, you can always call the firm. 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney will be in touch from Whitaker and Hamer. Josh, take it away.
I have to keep, every time Alex Jones gets in the news, like I don't know who he is right away. Like I have to like look into it and figure out who he is and who was he? Or is he? He's still with us, so who is he?
He's the host of InfoWars, which is like a conspiracy theory type news outlet.
And that was only on YouTube, right? I mean, I know he's not there anymore, but I think that was only on YouTube.
Yeah, it was never on a network or anything like that. It just existed out the world.
High following and subscribers. Yeah. So even though it was only on YouTube, it had some influence on a lot of people.
And then he'd get a lot of playtime on Facebook. The YouTube videos would be clipped on Facebook. So all my elderly relatives would share his videos, and so I am familiar with Alex Jones.
And so I really, when we do this show and we talk about news like this, I really try to make the show apolitical. Really, we just look at the facts. And, if we do this right, you don't know what side of the fence me, Taylor, and Cassandra, Morgan, Joe are on. We really just want to look at the facts just like we would if we were an attorney, if someone came into our office and were presenting us and we were kind of just doing a consult and trying to figure out what was going on. And so I usually don't, when I take in media, I try to be very careful about where the media is coming from, what I'm taking in. It's like eating healthy, right? Take what I'm taking into my body. Not that I do that, but that's how I view my news intake. And so Alex Jones being, I don't consider him an unbiased deliverer of the news. So I've kind of ignored his entire existence. So I only know about him when he got kicked off YouTube or whatever, I know all that. I know he kind of leaned towards the more conspiracy side of news. But anyway, the news today, the news that we want to talk about is, so he was involved in a lawsuit, right, Cassandra?
Yeah. So he was sued by the family of children that were killed in Sandy Hook. That was back in 2012, 10 years ago already, when 20 6 and 7-year-olds and 6 adults were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And that's Massachusetts.
I think, yeah, it's Massachusetts.
So he was sued by that family, and the family ended up winning I believe and hope that they would have won anyway, but the incompetence of Alex Jones's attorney really contributed to his demise in this case.
Yeah, I figured this would be a good time to explain. We haven't done it on the show. You may have had experience with the trial process, but no matter where you're at, again, we're all licensed attorneys in North Carolina. We're real attorneys, and we practice law, and that's kind of the take that we try to deliver on this show. Is what a practicing attorney would think about something like this. And so, Taylor, just a little bit. Can you give our listeners just the discovery process in general?
Yeah, let me jump in. Sandy Hook is in Connecticut.
No way.
Yeah, Newtown, Connecticut.
Thank you. Knew it was up north. I just couldn't remember what state. So discovery is a way to get information before a trial. So typically, by this point, something's been filed against you. There may have been an answer filed by the opposing party, but essentially discovery is the attorneys sending a bunch of questions and requests for documents to the other side. So it's a way to get a lot of information before the trial, and some of those questions are sometimes objected to. They're considered overly broad, or you limit the information given to just what they asked for instead of giving them full documents. So discovery is kind of a lengthy process, but it's a way to get a lot of information in before you actually end up in trial. So you already have evidence to go off of to say, okay, you may be lying, or okay, this is the proof that you did this.
Right. So let's say me and Taylor decides she's going to sell me a car, and I buy this car from Taylor, and it's not a good car.
That wasn't a good idea to buy a car from me, Josh.
Not a good car. So I decide I'm so unhappy with this car that I'm going to sue Taylor for breach of contract. And so I would go and I'd file a complaint against Taylor for breach of contract. She would answer and say, you knew this car wasn't great. That's why it's so cheap. And she would assert all her defenses. And then we'd be in discovery phase. And so there's rules of evidence, there's rules of discovery that govern how the attorneys representing parties can get information. So obviously I can ask her questions. I can depose her. I can take her deposition. I can do a lot of things, but I can only ask her questions that are relevant to this breach of contract case. I can't ask Taylor about, what she does for work necessarily. I guess that could be relevant, but I'm trying to think of something irrelevant.
So you probably couldn't ask me like, am I married or not? Like if that matters.
That's right.
Because it has no bearing on anything.
How many dogs you have.
Yeah. It has no bearing on anything. So that would be a question that if you had sued me and I was representing myself, I would object to because it has no relevance. I'm not answering this.
So the point of this is that the other side, the opposing side, can ask questions, request documents about things that are relevant to what the lawsuit is over. We can't just use this as a fishing expedition to get all the information we ever wanted to have about Taylor. It has to be relevant. And so here in the Alex Jones case, during the discovery process, come to find out the plaintiff's side got some information from Alex Jones' attorney that wasn't relevant. How did that happen, Cassandra?
So they did ask a relevant question, and for relevant documents, any texts that Alex Jones had sent that mentioned Sandy Hook, and that was denied. Alex Jones and his attorneys told the plaintiff's attorneys that he did not have any such texts. But somehow during the course of discovery, Alex Jones's attorneys sent a link to the plaintiff's attorneys, to the attorneys for the family of the children killed, that contained his entire cell phone for the last at least 2 years, all of the texts, all of the data. It was hundreds of gigs of data, including all of the texts where he did talk about Sandy Hook. There are legitimate reasons and ways that attorneys can hold back certain information.
Privilege.
So privilege. And there are various types of privilege. If you are texting about Sandy Hook with your attorney and your attorney is advising you about how to deal with something, your attorney wouldn't necessarily have to turn that over in response to a discovery request. But you have to inform everyone that that's what's happening. That is not what happened here.
Yeah, the fact that they got his entire phone is mind-boggling to me completely. Because usually attorneys, even if you're sending the information, most of it is redacted to just what you asked for, or somehow limited in, okay, here's these messages from this date to this date, but you don't get everything.
And the plaintiff's attorneys are the ones that had to inform Alex Jones's attorneys that this happened. Hey, you just sent us a link for all of this. And Alex Jones's attorneys said, okay, please ignore. We'll send you a new link. They never sent a new link. So they didn't get the actual discovery that they intended to send. And there are processes as well where you can then, if something is accidentally disclosed, you can claw it back. And there was no attempt made to claw it back either.
Yeah, I don't understand. This is this is like the biggest attorney just blunder that I've read about recently, and definitely in a national arena. But not only did you make the mistake to send this treasure, for the other side, this was a treasure trove of information, and they used it as such. They really used it about as well as you could. But they didn't try to get it back once they found out they made it. It's like a double mistake.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not a good day.
And for our listeners, this is why if you ever email an attorney, it's always this long paragraph at the end of their email saying, if you got this in error, please send back, delete, get rid of, things like that, because you weren't supposed to get it.
But then the third mess up is that Alex Jones seems to have been completely unaware that all of this happened. He didn't know that the other side had all of his texts, so he answered the questions as if the other side did not know that he had been texting about Sandy Hook for years. So it was teed up perfectly for the plaintiff's attorney, and he was so pleased with himself when he pulled out the cell phone records and says, "Are these your texts?" And Alex Jones says, "Yeah, they're right there. You have them. So obviously we gave them to you." And the plaintiff's attorney says, "Indeed, Mr. Jones, indeed you did." And that was just the greatest moment.
Yeah, he had been waiting his whole life for that.
Yeah. It's an excellent week in that guy's career. Further beyond this case, so those cell phone records have also been requested by the January 6th committee, and the plaintiff's attorney brought this matter to the judge in the Alex Jones case and inquired whether that would be allowed, whether the judge would say, no, this is limited to this case. The judge did not say that. The judge told the plaintiff's attorney that, "I'm not going to stand between you and Congress." So the plaintiff's attorney turned over all of Alex Jones's cell phone records to
the January 6th committee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So now the January 6th committee has all of his texts, and if he was talking about Sandy Hook, he could have been talking about anything else.
I mean, he's a public figure who has, this was all of his records, not just regarding Sandy Hook. So I'm sure he's had a lot of topics he's discussed in the last few years on his cell phone.
It's not good.
No.
It's and I read it. I can't remember. It was an opinion piece. I can't remember what newspaper it was in, but it was somebody saying, the attorney made a mistake. I didn't even get the attorney's name who made this mistake. Do you know his name? I don't know his name.
We'll probably never know his name.
Talking about how this probably isn't malpractice. The malpractice is a 4. You got to prove 4 things and whatever. And he was like, yes, it was a mistake, but I was like, how can it
but
not?
But if Alex Jones would have lost anyway.
Right.
So, but that Alex Jones might get another attorney that says that he totally could have won this lawsuit. And that'll be a whole nother can of worms we'll be able to review in the future.
I don't know.
Look forward to another episode.
I don't know Alex Jones. I don't follow Alex Jones, but I still felt so bad. I felt so bad for him when the plaintiff's attorney did that to him. Like you never want to see any, I guess maybe you do. I don't know, but see him that surprised and that taken off balance and not knowing, what to do or what to say.
And then he did continue to talk, and the plaintiff's attorney informed him that he could use his Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate himself further. And Alex Jones's eyes got big, like he had never heard that before. So there might, I don't know if it's malpractice or not, but it doesn't seem like good practice on his attorney's part.
I love that, all these trials are becoming such headline news because it gives us more fun to talk about on the show, but also just in our daily lives, the law is actually becoming headline news on a regular basis. Like before this, it was the Amber Heard trial, which everybody was talking about. Like people I know who never cared about the law were talking about that trial.
But then that also brings in more armchair internet lawyers, and my head explodes. So pros and cons.
Pros and cons. It gives Josh great material for the show, though.
That's right.
Speaking of material, we've got a lot to get to on the program today. You're locked into the Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They are your hosts. They are practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Joe is on assignment, not feeling well today. And we have Cassandra Nicholas and Taylor Scruggs-Smith, also attorneys at Whitaker and Hamer, joining us on the program. Again, offices in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, and Gastonia. If you've got a legal situation you're facing, call this number, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. And just leave your contact information, briefly what that call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can always email your questions to the program, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. And speaking of questions emailed to the program, we're going to get into one. Breonna Taylor, that case, that is coming up next on The Outlaw Lawyer, so stay tuned.